I had a wonderful weekend. I got a chance to go to Saskatoon. I haven't left town since since the state of emergency, March 18th. I've been dug in. I was dug in before too, but it was March 18th that I knew everything had changed. Funny enough, I'll never forget the day because I had just arrived back from Alberta and I lost my driver's license and my bank card. I went to my local insurer in the morning of the 18th. And before the state of emergency had been called, they were locked up and just about boarded up and had instructions for me to call the inside of the office. Of course, I've traveled a lot in my life, and I know many people from Venezuela. And the insurers being closed were one of the first stories that I ever heard. And it was a instant recognition of what was happening. Now, the thing is, I was following the entire saga, and I have been since January. So I knew that morning we only had 2 confirmed cases in Saskatchewan. That's it. But somehow on the national data and the Johns Hopkins, it reflected 16. We had 14 probable cases is what they said. But at the time this came down, we only had 2. And that's why I knew it was a matter of process and not an emergency like they were saying. Because the emergency certainly didn't apply to us here in Saskatchewan. The nature of our territory is unlike the rest of the country. We only have 1.12 million people in an area that's huge like Alberta and BC. We don't have the trains and the subways, and our transit is, well, has always been a joke. You'll see me often filming the empty buses because that's typical of here. I've never seen a full one in all the years I've lived here. We largely live in single-family dwellings. Again, the landscape completely different than the rest of the country. Yet the same rules were applying. I know at the same time, a lot of people were thinking, oh, she's a little paranoid. But I knew right then that that wasn't going to be a matter of weeks or months. I knew that we're not coming out of this until a new global government is installed. And that's the whole idea. The state of emergency has been used to circumvent our democracy, our rights and freedoms withheld by the state. And that's why I find it just absolutely mind-boggling that our government could call an election when we are still under a state of emergency that never was an emergency. Our government of Canada allowed the World Health Organization the management of this crisis. And it's their global governance injected into and through our public health officers that are laying the foundation, the hardwiring for global governance. This is why these measures do not make sense. But they sure start to make sense when you start to understand the goals of Agenda 2030. And that is going to be my focus, my friends, in the next month, is taking apart each one of these goals and demonstrating how it works in and the realities of what we're enduring works into that actual plan. we are in what they're calling the Great Reset. And it's true, because it's not only our economics, it's the entire structure of our society and how we even relate. It's not our values and norms here in Saskatchewan, I can tell you that. And in fact, the Agenda 2030 plan is 100% in contravention of conservative values that we value so much. It's quite scary because these policies are not reflective of our true nature. And we literally have a global entity coming in telling us how we are going to relate and behave for the rest of our lives. And how the children are going to be socialized. The fact is, we have no representation. And trying to have an election while we're under a state of emergency is, well, I would say clinically insane. Our rights and freedoms have been revoked. So how can we vote? It makes no sense. In any case, I think that we should be saying absolutely not. And either this election gets pushed ahead or it's just canceled altogether until this state of emergency is lifted. We would know their good intentions if they were to lift it for the election, would we not? And we also know that there is no emergency. In any case, it was wonderful getting to Saskatoon because I got to speak at the protest there and was absolutely happy to meet all the people that I have been going back and forth with on No Masks, and even before I started it on my own feed. But getting to know the people, what a gift. It really is. I can tell you, in all the years I lived here, when I had my business in the past, I spent a lot of time on the road and away. And in that time, I never really met like minds. In business, I did for sure. But outside of that, I didn't. And the last 10 years, I really missed that. And connecting with Saskatoon was wonderful. The guy up there, Austin, is quite the organizer. And they had mics set up for speakers, myself included, and just an awesome vibe, camaraderie. And they're actually working on a protest in Humboldt coming up mid-October, I believe October 18th. And that's going to be a provincial one where we want everybody to go. So keep that one on your calendar. I got a chance to meet Mark Friesen for the first time personally, and that was awesome. The Grizzly Patriot. If you don't know him already, you should subscribe on YouTube. He's been at Agenda 2030 way longer than I have. He's the master. And he asked me to do an interview on Saturday night. Of course, today he just did an interview with David Icke, the legend. And of course, another one who understands the goals of all of this right now and has been talking about it for 30 years. It's interesting that this is all coming to fruition at this particular time. And that was pretty cool of David to take the time for Mark Friesen and the Grizzly Patriot. What I love about guys like David and Mark is that it doesn't matter how many people are listening. They keep hammering away. The humiliation. Being called a conspiracy theorist. They keep going. because they know in their heart it's the right thing to do. And the education is everything. I saw a lot of male energy in all of this before, which is why I kicked up to take my spot and hopefully start to bring in women and other people that weren't maybe finding resonance with them. Of course, after him interviewing David, I have to study. Like, wow. But I'm happy to have another person in the province that's speaking publicly about a UN Agenda 2030. And quite honestly, he's like the only other one in Canada that is hammering it like I have been. I'm doing it because I knew it was the single greatest threat to our democracy. And in fact, the state of emergency absolutely circumvented our democracy and still has. People are coming out of the woodwork. No Mask Sask is growing every single day. It's finally finding its flow with me, and I'm feeling much more comfortable, not so edgy, taking out trolls. I don't have to do that as often anymore, which is really nice. These are crazy times, my friends. And right now, Agenda 2030 is the only thing that needs to be on the lips of Canadians and people around the world, because you all have a plan. I'm going to be spending the next month, and we're going to be digging into the plan, because I want you to understand the goals, the 17 goals that the UN has deemed our future. And Canada and the rest of the UN member nations have agreed. Of course, one of those goals is 99% vaccination. And this is a perfect example of going, okay, here's the goal. Now how are they going to get there in a democracy? Oh, we don't have a democracy. Get it? I want to show you the end game so you can understand that we can't ever get there unless we have medical martial law. It's only when we understand the end game that we can understand the steps that are going to be necessary for them to reach their goals. It is the season of global governance. And I don't believe we'll ever be out of these states of emergency until an official global government is installed. And that is already underway and has been since the spring. The World Health Organization, they're there holding ground right now, injecting policies through public health. I'm still optimistic. I am. I have to be. Because the masks are just the beginning of the fun. The nonsensical nature of Agenda 2030. And the fact that it's not our culture and never was. This is, and this plan is the absolute contravention of our conservative values here in Saskatchewan. That our great province was built. We're hard workers. We don't expect a handout. But Agenda 2030 is all about the handout. Universal income. Communist ideals injected into our world here in Canada, our free country. The two cannot coexist, my friends. And this is why it's not business as usual. And as much as our government tries to deny it all and the other politicians that it even exists, it's only because they know they could never overcome the issues if they made them election issues. This is the time you need to be questioning those people that are coming to your door to promote themselves. Because the fact that they have no stance on the state of emergency is rather scary. The fact that not one of them has stood up to say a thing about it, to challenge it, to challenge our government. They're more concerned with getting your kids in masks, inhibiting their breathing, and actually causing them ill health. This isn't right, my friends, but people are rising. Now that they have, well, evidence of these policies, and school was a perfect example of that, and has demonstrated to parents the necessity to take action. Is this the future you want for your children? Because your vision and the United Nations vision is not one and the same, my friends. We need to look hard at this and decide if this is our future, if this is what we want. Because if we don't, we need to be loud and clear right now. I hope you'll join me in the next couple of weeks as we start ripping apart these goals and talking about the issues. I'll be doing some breakout groups too, and if anyone is interested, I'm going to be putting those together on Zoom where we can zoom in and understand what it all means so that we can make plans for the future. We have to come up with this all by ourselves because our government is, well, they're not being honest with us. I want to be honest with you because I believe that you deserve the information. And then, and only then, can you make a qualified decision as to how you want to move forward.